so kind, staring out into space, asking God to hear my case, trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Hi, everyone. This is Lori LeBay with Alzheimer Speaks. I hope you're enjoying the day. We are freezing cold here in Minnesota. We got our first snowstorm the other day, and now we're kind of down below zero and hovering down. Before we get started today, I always like to just tell people a little bit about us because we're always getting new listeners around the world. And bottom line, Alzheimer Speaks is an advocacy-based company providing multiple platforms to shift our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort worldwide. I started this company just due to my mom's own journey of 30 years with dementia and just felt a need for different techniques and platforms and resources to help not only those with dementia, but their loved ones and professionals as well to understand it a little bit more. So here we really focus on sharing knowledge and having just real simple everyday conversations about life with dementia, how we deal with it, how we can help remove stigmas attached to memory loss, and let everyone continue to live purpose-filled lives. At our core, we believe collaboration is really the only way we're going to win this battle against dementia. And I know it's working thanks to each and every one of you. You see, your clicks, your likes, your shares has gotten us some great recognition. In fact, the other week, we were recognized by Maria Shriver as being an architect of change. ShareCare and Dr. Oz has also recognized Alzheimer Speaks as the #1 influencer online regarding Alzheimer's. And again, that's because of you guys. You know, a lot of times we don't think we're very powerful or that a couple second little click or like is going to have a very big effect, but it actually has a huge impact. You see, your Facebook friends, your Twitter tribe, your LinkedIn colleagues, your Pinterest peeps, everybody is dealing with this dementia in some way, shape, or form. And the more information we can have out there and available to people, the easier it's going to be for those in the trenches. So I would encourage you, and again, I want to thank you for your support, but would encourage you to continue sharing not only the radio show, but our kind of mothership, AlzheimerSpeaks.com, where you can find information on our blog. You can find information about Dementia Chats, which is a webinar where our experts actually have dementia, and many other offerings that we have. You also might be interested to know who the heck do we interview and why. I'm a big believer that we need to hear all voices. So we listen and have guests on who are actually diagnosed with the disease. We have family members on. We have professional care partners, we have researchers, we have advocates, we have organizations and businesses, entrepreneurs, authors, movie directors. Everybody, everyone's voice needs to be heard because we're all coming from different angles and have different insights. And again, this is a disease we have to work through as a community at large. And that's one of the things that I really love about our next guest. Jade Angelica, she designs workshops and services and trainings called Healing Moments, and she offers presentations throughout the country. She is also a spiritual advisor and helps people with their individual spiritual paths, as well as doing some group work. She's written a play called The Forgetting, Hope and Healing for Alzheimer's. And she authored the book called Where Two Worlds Touch, A Spiritual Journey Through Alzheimer's Disease, and also Meeting Alzheimer's, which is a companionship of the journey itself. She's very innovative in her space and just a real compassionate soul. So I want to welcome you to the show, Jade.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much. I'm really very, very pleased to be here with you today.
Well, before we get started in some of our talking points, I always like to give people a little background about how did you get into this space? Were you personally touched by dementia with family or friends?
Yes, absolutely. And my story is similar to yours. I was drawn into this work because of my role as a caregiver for my own mom, but my connection to Alzheimer's goes back even further than that. When I was in college, my mother's oldest sister was diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's, before we even really knew what it was. This was in the 1970s, and it was very frightening to everyone, particularly to me, visiting her in a nursing home. And then the middle sister, Mom's second sister, also was diagnosed with and died from dementia. So I was very, very frightened by the whole topic. And when my mom was diagnosed, I was in that space of being very scared. And so it took. I say to people, I was sort of catapulted into the space of not avoiding it anymore when I was called upon to take care of my mom. So the book that I wrote, Where Two Worlds Touch, is actually a kind of a spiritual memoir of what I discovered as I was going through that process with my mom.
Wow. And I have to ask you this question because people ask it of me all the time, and I'm always interested in other people's answers. For you, since, you've got, it was your mom, but also other family members, do you worry about that for yourself now?
A lot of people ask me that, and I actually do not so much. All of my family members were quite a bit older when they were diagnosed with dementia. My mom was 81, and it's my understanding that the hereditary Alzheimer's is usually early onset. People who have the early onset Alzheimer's are usually the ones that their children are usually the ones that will have that gene. Mm-hmm. So I've chosen actually to not worry about it for a couple reasons. The current research now is showing a connection between environmental factors, lifestyle factors, diet, and I many years ago chose to live a very healthy lifestyle. So I avoid exposure as much as I can to environmental toxins and chemicals. I eat a really healthy organic diet, mostly vegetarian, and I exercise, I meditate. So I've really chosen that healthy lifestyle, which many researchers are now showing is a deterrent toward Alzheimer's. So the other reason I've chosen not to worry about it is because of my spiritual approach to life is if I get it, I get it. Mm-hmm. And I will, accept and deal with it at that time.
Okay, great. You kind of have the same philosophy as me, except I'm probably not living as healthy of a life as you are. I haven't put everything into practice, needless to say, but it's one of those things that we don't have control over. Are we going to get it or aren't we going to get it? And there's some things that we can do that they think might help, but nobody really knows for sure. Right. But I think that's wonderful that you've instituted all those healthy lifestyles into yours to try to offset that. So that's great. Yeah. So I appreciate you sharing that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do want to say one of the things that motivated me to develop and lead my workshops, particularly for professional caregivers, the workshops that we lead are you use the word innovative, and they're about a very creative way of communicating with people with Alzheimer's and dementia using improvisational theater techniques.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons I developed this program and am adamant about offering it for professional caregivers is because in my mom's nursing home, I live in Iowa, so I have the same kind of winter as you do, maybe not quite so bad. But in the wintertime, I couldn't walk outside with her after dinner.
Mm-hmm.
So we would walk up and down the long hallways of the nursing home, and sometimes I would glance into the rooms and I would see some of the residents there, and I would just be hit with the realization that someday that could be me. I could be one of the residents in this nursing home. And I thought, if I do have dementia, I would really appreciate it if the people who were taking care of me knew what was needed in order to take care of someone who had dementia.
Mm-hmm.
So that has been one of my real purposes of advocacy, and I know that's one of your goals too, is advocacy around educating the general public, family members, of course, but also the people who are working in care facilities. Not all of them really know the specialized care that's required for people with dementia. So that was one of the things I kind of do fear, that I might be in a nursing home without, and people wouldn't know how to care for people with dementia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that that's a real concern. We've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go, I think, with the whole thing. So,
I agree
with you there. Well, I'm really excited to talk to you today about your work. And in your work, you focus on what remains for people with dementia rather than what's been lost. And that's a big shift. And I think one that's really positive. Can you tell people why you think it's important, and what are some of the things that you've discovered that still remain that might surprise some people?
Yeah, one of the things that one of the reasons why I think it's important to notice what remains is because we're dealing with a cultural conditioning that allows people to say things about people with dementia, such as, Alzheimer's is a kind of death, or they're dead before they're dead. One of the things that people say about people with dementia, still, this was left to us by Adolf Hitler, that people with dementia are useless eaters. And there was an article in one of our local newspapers that really sparked me to pay attention to this. It was a reporter who was writing about advertising the walk to end Alzheimer's. And he was trying to be very creative, I guess, and he compared people with Alzheimer's to the Beach Boys. And he said they were able to mount the stage but unable to offer anything new. And I was reading the newspaper while I was sitting at the rhythm time at my mom's nursing home, watching all these people with dementia. And I thought, he's wrong. Mm-hmm. He's wrong. They are able to offer new things. And he was the one who talked about them being empty shells. And I'm like, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. These people aren't empty shells. And it just made me look at what they could still do. And I wrote a letter to the editor of the newspaper, and I said, we can't keep spreading these kinds of falsehoods about people with dementia. And I wrote this list of things that they can do. Mm-hmm. They still have the potential to inspire us, teach us, love us, heal us, amuse us, befriend us, calm us, comfort us, touch us, physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. They have the capacity to energize us, enlighten us, empower us, forgive us, nurture us, open our hearts, bring out the best in us, and bring meaning and purpose into our lives. And, I had this experience when we were making the CD, Meeting Alzheimer's Companionship on the Journey. the woman who wrote one of the songs for this, and I worked together very, very closely. And when I took it over to her when it was completed, she made this comment to me. She said, Jade, you have an interesting combination of skills. She said you're very organized and you're very sweet. And so I paused and I thought about that, and I said to her, before I came here to take care of my mom, I was just organized.
Mm-hmm.
And this care for my mother brought out a compassionate side of me, a very caring, loving, kind, sweet side of me that as a academic professional I hadn't really accessed before. And it created such a transformation in me that I'm sorry that my mom had to go through that, but I don't regret my companionship with her on the journey, not at all. It was just really, really an amazing experience for me. And she possessed all of those abilities to forgive me, to nurture me, even in the end stages of Alzheimer's. And I think if we as a culture think that people with dementia are dead before they're dead and they're empty shells, that it's just easier for us to cast them aside.
Mm-hmm. I
But
agree.
if we believe that they're living souls and their lives still have meaning and purpose, which they do, then it's more important for us to visit with them and spend time with them and nourish them as well. So I just felt like they also had a lot to teach us if we were to just open our hearts to the experience.
Yep, I totally agree with you on that. And so many people, like you said, they just focus on the loss, and you will find whatever you're looking for. And so it really is a teaching that has to take place to get people to understand that there is so much more to be found, but you have to look for it, because it's not going to, you're not going to find it if you choose not to look for it. So
Exactly.
And people have to see others, I think, lead by example on that. I think that's how we shift culture. And I see you as a culture changer as well.
Yeah.
Can you just
Thank you. That's my goal.
Yeah. Can you describe your healing moments as combining, spirit and art? What do you really mean by that? And can you give us some examples of that combination for our listeners?
Sure. The combination that we mean by spirit and art is the workshops that we've developed combine the spiritual practice of mindfulness, which is a different creative way of just talking about being observant, observing what's going on around us, observing what's going on within us, and observing other people, for example, our loved ones with dementia. And the art part that we use in our workshops is we actually teach caregivers how to implement the primary technique for communicating and connecting that professionals, experts in this field, have been recommending for 30 years. And that is to meet the person with dementia in his or her world.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we say that, and when these experts have been saying this for 30 years, some people, people hear that, meet the person with dementia in his or her world, and some people will go, huh?
Yeah, I walked into the living room. That's where she is. Okay, so now what?
yeah. They don't get it, and then some of them who do get it don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier said than done. So if we for example, I can tell you a story. I was spending some time with my mom. This was like my first in-depth time with her. Spent 2 weeks with her in the middle stages of Alzheimer's while my sibling who was living with her went on vacation. And we were getting ready to go someplace, and we were going to visit her friend at the nursing home. And we were getting dressed, and she came storming into the bedroom, and she said, "We can't go now. This is the time when Millie comes to visit." Now, Millie was her older sister, the first one who died from Alzheimer's, and she'd been dead for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in my world, I would say, "Mom, Millie's not coming. She's dead. We
Mm-hmm.
visited her grave yesterday. Don't you remember?" But in her world, Millie's coming. So I accepted what she said as valid, and I responded appropriately. And I said, "Well," knowing that we were still going to go to the nursing home, I said, what would you think if we put a note on the door and let Millie know where we were, and when we come back, and then she can come in and wait for us?"
Mm-hmm.
Mom said, "Oh, what a good idea." And I said, "Well, you go get some paper, and we'll write a note." So she was searching for paper, and while she was searching for paper, she forgot what her mission was about. It was time to go, and we went to the nursing home. So we teach people in our workshops how to do that, how to accept the reality of what their loved one has said, how to affirm their beliefs, how to validate their reality. And the craft of improvisation reminds us to always make our scene partner look good. So in my world, I'm reminding her that she's mistaken, that she's forgotten. And I want to affirm her and build her self-esteem. And so this is one of the things that we really, really focus on teaching people to do, how to say yes. And when I say yes, I don't mean that we're encouraging people to necessarily always agree with people who have dementia, but we're encouraging them to affirm them and accept them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we do our workshops are very experiential, and we do a series of exercises that slowly develop these skills, and by the end of the workshop, people are actually practicing this and having that aha moment that they're not just reading it in a book or hearing it in a lecture that says you need to meet the person in their reality. They're actually having the opportunity to do that, to experience that.
See, and I think that that's just the way most people learn, if we admit it or not. It sinks a little deeper into the soul when you actually practice it, and it's not just something that you read. It's not a statistic. It's not
Right.
it's not a style. It's a lifestyle, and it's a choice that we have in terms of how to engage. Where so
Right.
many times things are pitched as best practices, and it really is about best lifestyle choices.
I agree.
To engage. And because I think there's a lot of best practices that don't work. People think they do, but if people don't understand them at the depth that they need to, then they're just doing a task. And there's a big difference in terms of that connectivity and how that plays out.
Absolutely. And there was a groundbreaking book that was written in 2004. It was actually the first book that I read about Alzheimer's. And in this book gave me the idea to try doing improvisation with my mother. I was taking improvisation classes at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And why I was doing that is a whole other workshop, because I'm not the spontaneous improvisation type,
Mm-hmm.
but I was able to learn this craft, and I saw that it had incredible implications for healing. It wasn't just about entertainment. It wasn't just about comedy. It wasn't just about being funny or outrageous. It was, wow, there was really possibility for healing there. So that's the piece I wove into the healing moments. But in Learning to Speak Alzheimer's, they talk about a habilitation therapy, a habilitation approach, and they identify, I believe it's 6 different domains that are important for maintaining quality of life for people with dementia. And some of them are like the social domain or the physical domain. But the most important, they say, is the area of communication and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what the Healing Moments program focuses on, is that domain of communicating and connecting. Because relationships with people with Alzheimer's and dementia are possible throughout the entire course of the disease. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
I know that from personal experience. And we've shared that now with other people who are beginning the journey. And I feel like it gives them hope. It's like all is not lost.
Yep.
Relationships can grow. People can grow even though they still have Alzheimer's. They're growing. So as long as they're breathing, that soul is still there and a relationship is possible.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of it too is, and I speak to this, and I'm sure you do as well, is we have to learn how to communicate differently. So even when their words are gone, a lot of times people think, well, they can't communicate. And it's like, well, over 75% of our communication is nonverbal. So why are you tossing that out with the bathwater? It's or the baby with the bathwater in that situation. We have to do things differently. And, we just take things for granted. And so I love the whole improv in learning new tools and highlighting, some things that we already have and some skills that are probably embedded in us, but we've just never ignited them. And, and to be able to have some fun, and not take things so seriously, because people take this very seriously. This is a big job, and not that I'm trying to belittle that, but, it's called life. And, if you're going to live your life very serious, black and white, and stress about everything, your life's probably going to end up being a little shorter than it has to be. Just from from the physics of it all and the damage that can do to us, let alone will it be a happy life?
Yeah, and I've been really inspired by some researchers. One of the researchers that really inspired me is a man from Australia named Stephen Millett. And his research, he calls people with dementia semiotic subjects. And what this means is that they communicate with signs and symbols, but they're still communicating. So what we call behaviors, in the nursing homes, they will call like acting out behaviors. Most likely are people with dementia trying to tell us something. They're trying to communicate something to us. And I feel like it's up to us to encode their messages. And one of the things I felt strongly about dementia is that it will really challenge our creativity and things like creativity and patience and compassion. And I think that if we further develop these skills, that does nothing but improve our own humanity in the world. And so I think that the challenges to creativity and compassion and patience, if we accept them, if we say yes to them, that's part of approaching life as an improviser, is saying yes. And of course, this is a very spiritual concept too, saying yes to whatever comes our way, not resisting it. And a lot of people are resisting the realities of dementia. And after I got over my initial fear and avoidance of the whole topic, I honestly, wholeheartedly stepped into the world and accepted what was there. And another study out of New York showed that the only coping technique to relieve caregiver stress is acceptance. So the more we try to convince our loved ones that they don't have to go to work, or that their spouse has passed away, or that they don't need to eat lunch, the more we need to convince them of anything that is against their reality, the more stress we're going to cause on them and for ourselves.
Agree. I definitely agree with that. Now, you've been working with researchers at the University of Iowa who have documented the retention of emotional memory, which I think is, something that people don't really think about, but is so powerful. And
Absolutely.
and so, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I would be happy to. The first study was done it was published in 2010 by a researcher named Justin Feinstein, who was he was a graduate student at the University of Iowa. And I read about his research in the New York Times, and I thought, well, he's right down the road. I'm going to contact him because he was very adamant that this research is really a mandate to our society to care for people with Alzheimer's and dementia. He said it's not just a moral mandate, it's now a scientific mandate. We really have to care for them because they have this life going on as they lose their cognitive skills, but their emotions remain throughout the course of their lives. And what they found was that this study was then replicated in 2014 by a researcher who's now out at Mass General. Her name is Edmarie Guzman-Velez. And what they found is that people with dementia will feel happy or sad long after they have forgotten what made them feel happy or sad.
Mm-hmm.
So no memory whatsoever of an event, but the emotions remain. And what's specifically significant about this is that as the disease of dementia progresses, people will lose their ability to process emotions, and they'll lose their ability to soothe themselves. So if they are upset by something or frightened or angry or sad, they're kind of stuck in that. And it's up to us to help soothe them when they're that way, but it's also up to us to try to prevent from causing them to feel any kind of distressing emotions. This could be one of the reasons why people act out, why they get really angry, is something has happened and they can't tell us what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know, they don't remember anymore, and even if they did, they probably couldn't articulate it. So this is really, really amazing research. And one of the reasons why they were particularly interested in the Healing Moments program, and we have now engaged in a study of the Healing Moments program with these same researchers at the University of Iowa, is they're interested in it because they perceive it to be a practical application of their research findings, because what we're trying to do is teach people to help people with Alzheimer's have more happy days than sad days, to help us not cause anger and fear and sad emotions in this population. So this research has been ongoing for a couple years, and we hope to have results within the next year to 18 months. So that's very exciting to see if this program actually can help people reduce their stress, caregivers reduce their stress, their anxiety, their depression, and improve their relationships with their loved ones and improve the relationships, the person with dementia's cooperation. But I do want to tell you the story of how this research came about, because I think this is really important for caregivers to hear, how important it is for us to keep telling our stories. So Daniel Tranell is the director of the research, the neuropsychology research at the University of Iowa, and he was at a medical conference, and a colleague of his came up to him and told him this story about his mother. He said that he visited his mother every Thursday afternoon, and it appeared that she didn't remember that he came. Like that night she would complain to the staff that her son never came to visit her, and the next morning he would call and she would say, "Why don't you ever come to visit me?" And it just felt very clear to him that she was not remembering that he came. So one particular Thursday, he was very, very busy with work, and he couldn't get away, and he thought, well, it won't matter to her because she doesn't know the difference anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next morning, the staff at the nursing home called him and said that his mother was really angry and really out of sorts, and just they couldn't get her to do anything or cooperate in any way, and they just, they wanted to let him know and see if he could help in any way. So he went over there, but that wasn't the point of the story. The point of the story that he told Dr. Trinnell was, do you think that on some level she knew that I wasn't there and that she missed me?
Mm-hmm.
And Dr. Trinnell brought that question back to him, to his neuroscience lab, and that was how this research got developed that created earth-shattering results. Is that so even though when we go to visit our loved ones, is they may not exactly know who we are, and they may not even remember that we were there, but they are going to remember how we made them feel.
Mm-hmm. They
will feel happy that we have come.
Yep. And that validation, it needs to be, this sounds really silly, but it needs to be enough for the rest of us. And to get away from, well, they have to know my name, they have to give me eye contact, they have to be who they were by my standards, whatever I'm going to decide those. I mean, we're making up all these rules, and which they can't follow, in which they're not even told, instead of just graciously living acceptingly, side by side with this disease, and give ourselves credit for being much more than just a name, and I've run into this, and I'm sure you have too, where I've had people ask me about my mom, and does she know who I am? And what I found in my journey was people asked me that for two reasons. Some people really wanted to know, and others just wanted to give me permission to never see her again because they didn't want to hear my story anymore, because they were so uncomfortable. And I think as a society, we need to get rid of that. We all need to become much more accepting and look at it as an educational, a learning tool, instead of this big, fear monger, and being so afraid of everything. There's so much to learn. There's so many gifts wrapped in all of life, as well as any type of disease. Dementia is no different. When you're on the journey, it's not something anybody would pick, but did you learn from it? Did it make you a better person? That's our own choice.
Right.
How we're gonna frame that.
Yeah, and Lori, I moved out to Iowa from Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a doctoral program in Boston, and I was thinking about planning to come out here to be my mom's companion on this journey, because all of the other family members that lived here moved away.
Mm-hmm.
And she was all alone in a nursing home with Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to colleagues and friends about coming out here to care for her, and they were shocked and astounded that I would give up my life to move to Dubuque, Iowa, to care for a person who didn't even remember who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And my initial response was, well, I still remember who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And this was my mother, and this, in my opinion, was her time of greatest need in her life. She needed me now more than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
And so then after I got here and was spending time with her and the other people in the dementia wing where my mom lived, I started to question that she didn't remember me.
Mm-hmm.
And it, as the disease progressed, or that the other people with dementia remembered their loved ones, I could see it.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely witnessed it and experienced it. Maybe they didn't know exactly what the relationship was, but they knew we mattered. They knew we were important to them. And that was a beautiful thing
Yeah,
to see those relationships.
that they were comfortable and content
Yep.
or happy. I mean, those are all good things. Why do we push that away?
Yeah.
Because somebody can't say our name. I mean, it's really it's kind of silly when you say it out loud, but it happens a lot. But it happens
Yeah.
it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And the other thing that hit me when you were talking was, talking about friends, because we're probably, around the same age and stuff. We always
Yeah.
talk about the younger generation being so me-oriented, but chances are your friends were of your age, and
Yes.
and they're being very me-oriented. Why would you give that of yourself? Because you're gonna lose out on all of this that you have, instead of looking at it in a bigger light. So that I just, from a generational standpoint, that just hit me really strong when you were saying that, because we always kind of poo-poo that onto the younger generation. And the younger generation's stepping up quite a bit in terms of their activism and things. So that's I think that's going to be really interesting to watch as time progresses. Especially regarding dementia, and because it's just such a big thing that we have to deal with. I want to talk about. There's so much to talk about with you. Your play and your
Sure.
DVD. So why don't you tell people a little bit about how they came to be? How did you become a playwright? When you were an academic, and turned into a care
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah. Well, I've always been very interested in theater, and partly because and this is another of my interest in art and using improvisation, I really do believe that art has the ability to open their hearts in a way that allows us to more deeply touch their minds. And so I was working with a woman who, in Healing Moments, I was working with a woman who said, we should put this into a play. The workshops and my book, we should put this into a play. And so it's gone through several different renditions, but that's exactly what we did. So the script for The Forgiving and the Forgetting is loosely based on my story of my journey with my mom and the workshops that we developed. So it's what you would call a didactic play, in that its goal is to both inspire and inform, and also to give people some hope in this journey that sometimes feels overwhelming and scary, frankly, because you don't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And so the play has original music. We wrote a composer from Chicago we wrote the music. Well, she wrote the music. I helped with the lyrics. But the process of writing it has just been really phenomenal. And we've had a few performances, and we did a performance here in Iowa for the Alzheimer's Association at a conference, and we did a performance in Chicago and one in Los Angeles, and those were both for conferences on aging and spirituality. And the title, The Forgiving and the Forgetting, it's a story about a family and their different ways of dealing with dementia. And one of the main characters is a Catholic priest. It's his mother who has dementia, and a sort of estranged daughter who becomes also involved in the care. And it's how the family grapples with it, approaching the dementia from different ways. And it also shows the decline, but yet how the relationships can continue. And because the main character is a Catholic priest, we've woven in some of those spiritual issues. And we absolutely hope that we are communicating to people through this play that caring for our loved ones who are older caring for our loved ones who have cognitive loss does not have to be a burden. That it could indeed be what I think it has been for you and for me, Lori. It could be one of our life's greatest blessings if we just open ourselves up to that. So what we discovered is that putting on a live performance of a play is very expensive. So that's why we videotaped it. We videotaped the live performance in Chicago and made that into a play. And so, for example, we made it into a DVD. So now people can have it for not very much money. Like, we're going to have a showing at a local retreat center here, and it will cost them nothing to put it on because the DVD already exists.
Mm-hmm.
So the DVD is about 80 minutes long. We did shorten it from the actual script of the play is about 2 hours long, but we shortened it so that it could be used like at a support group.
Mm-hmm.
You could show it at a support group and then still have time for people to have conversation. We're going to show it at the retreat center and still have time for people to have a conversation and discussion afterwards. We could show it at a conference and still have time for people to have discussion afterwards.
That's which is really nice, because I'm dealing with I'm one of the platinum sponsors of the film, His Neighbor Phil, and everybody wants it on DVD, and they're still trying to get it on national TV and working out a deal, and so they can't. But boy, it could help a lot more people. But it also needs to be facilitated. I think you need that talkback session. For people to really be able to process what it is they've seen and how it makes them feel. And, where do they want to go from there? I think that's a really, really big piece that a lot of times is overlooked with some of the other pieces that people look at more as entertainment. And they really, truly can be educational on that emotional level.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things, art just has such an ability to evoke emotions in people in a way that just, for example, a lecture may not.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we felt strongly about is that, and through our workshops too, is that people learn through experience. Like in our workshops, you're learning by engaging body, mind, heart and spirit. You're fully engaged in these workshops, and then you get the opportunity to reflect on what you've experienced. And it feels like in that reflection piece is where we really deepen our understanding of what we've learned, of what we've felt, of what we've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that way too in a piece like The Forgiving and the Forgetting, is that you get the opportunity to now reflect on what you've just witnessed and how it made you feel.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I think, because that gets to the core of passion. And passion, to me, is what drives change. It's way more than just a thought. It's way more than a process. It's passion is something that allows us to believe it can really change and it can really have an impact. And to me, that's the deal breaker, in terms of moving forward. And if you don't have that belief, it's not gonna work.
Yeah. And I've felt that way, Lori, just having witnessed your work over the years, that your passion has made such a difference.
Oh, thank you.
In this field. Yeah. And I had the joy this summer of getting to see you in person and just experiencing that advocacy piece. I think I mentioned to you, I'd never before seen that presented at a conference. This is what we can do. And I am happy to report to your listeners that, inspired by you, we now have started a memory cafe here in Dubuque.
Woo-woo, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
very cool.
There were another person and I had been talking about it, and she also was at the conference that you presented at here this summer. And afterwards, we just looked at each other and said, "Yeah, we're going to do this," and we did. And so we started meeting in October.
Oh, cool.
Meeting once a month, yeah. So we're really, really thrilled to be offering that service here for our community.
Well, that's really neat. It would be fun to come back and see what all has happened in a year's time, because I think that was a lot of seeds planted during that conference. And
I agree.
because I think when people start seeing how much is happening, it blossoms even more, with that. And
absolutely.
Stuff. So, well, our time is running short here. I can't believe how fast it's going. And there's still a couple more things I want to talk about. And one is, in your work with people with dementia and their care partners, what has surprised you the most?
Well, I'll tell you one of my first surprises was I mentioned that when I moved out here, I was in a doctoral program, and this was a program in faith, health, and spirituality, and at a seminary. And I ended up doing a lot of my study in this topic, which is where the book evolved from. And I remember having a conversation with my professor over some of the writing that I had been doing. And she said to me, what really surprised, I guess she was surprised. Her surprise surprised me. She said, it really surprises me, Jade, to read this because it doesn't sound like you're suffering as you care for your mother.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, this is so contrary to what I hear from other people who have loved ones with dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately I started thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I'm doing something wrong, that I'm not suffering. But the truth of it is I was not.
Mm-hmm.
I was not. I was in a process with my mother where our relationship deepened, our relationship healed. There was all this forgiveness, all this deep understanding. And what was fascinating to me as I looked back, I didn't, she died in January, and the following November, I was looking through a file of family correspondence, and I found these letters that she had written to me in 2003, 2004, when she had, in the kind of moderate early stages. And she was reaching out to me. To heal our relationship, which had been very, very strained and wounded over the years. She was reaching out to me, and I did not realize that until after she died. But people with dementia, they can still, and that's the other surprise, is that the meaningful, loving, healing relationships remain possible. That was my biggest surprise.
Yeah.
Wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think for me, one of the other biggest surprises was the doom and gloom side, that more people didn't experience what I had experienced, where people didn't even know it was possible or what you experienced.
The joy.
Yeah.
They didn't experience the joy. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I experienced so much joy.
Yeah, I did too. And lifelong, lessons that improve all of life, not just that relationship. But and it made me feel sad that people didn't think that was even a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't look for it. They didn't try to create it because they bought into the fear spin, of the doom and gloom.
Yes.
And this is the only way we can raise money. And this is the only way we can get dollars for research, is if we scare the bejesus out of everybody.
Right.
And
Right. Yeah, and for those people that experience this as the worst thing that ever happened to them in their lives. And I had a really different experience of that, Lori, because the truth of the matter is that we are all going to die.
mm-hmm.
And I did not experience my mom as suffering. I think there's a lot of suffering and fear in the beginning stages, or it can be when people understand that they're going to be losing their memory.
Mm-hmm.
But then something happens. There's a transition that takes place, and people with dementia are just really here right now.
Yeah.
They're very present in the moment. They're present in their lives, and we can learn a lot from that. And I didn't experience her as suffering at the end of her life.
Yeah. For me, I always explained it that my mom lost her ego. And so the stuff that we worry about, the stuff that we believe we're being judged about, the things that keeps us on our toes and keeps us uncomfortable and keeps us trying to, dance to another beat that isn't our own, that's gone. That's gone. They're just totally accepting. And, I would always say, she is kind of my rock. She is the safest place I could ever go, no matter what was going on, even in her end stages, because she just didn't judge. She was just there to support, even if she couldn't speak words. That there's just, she just taught me that there's a much deeper, more profound connection, and that that unconditional love comes in many layers, which I wasn't aware of either.
And I just have to say, Lori, that just brought tears to my eyes, because I have to say I had the exact same experience. My mom became my safe place.
Mm-hmm.
She was always there. She was in a nursing home, so if I needed my mom, she was there.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't judge. She just didn't disappoint me. She was always there, always available.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like she could provide those things to me that a daughter needs from her mother. Even though she had end-stage dementia, she could be there.
Yep. Yeah. And more fully in some ways than I think when my mom, and my mom and I were always really close, and she was always very compassionate, but it was a much tighter, more intimate relationship the further her disease progressed. And it made me realize the deepness of the human connection.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I had the same experience.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. Last thing, I want to just ask you, how do people get a hold of you if they want to have you for a conference or learn more about your play and your DVD or your book? We really didn't even get a chance to talk about Where Two Worlds Touch, a spiritual journey through Alzheimer's disease. You have so many things to offer, Jade. How do people get a hold of you?
Thank you. Yeah. Well, my email is jadeangelica@gmail.com, and the phone number is 563-582-4724. And people can also go to the Healing Moments website, which is healingmoments.org. And the resources, the CD, which is called Meeting Alzheimer's, Companionship on the Journey, and the book Where Two Worlds Touch are both available on Amazon, Amazon.com. The CD, I believe, can also be ordered through our website. And the DVD, if anyone wants the DVD, they should just get in touch with me. We don't have it offered publicly for sale yet, but I certainly would be happy to make sure that people can get a copy of that. And also, we have scripts available if anybody wants to do a live performance of the play. Would love that.
Oh, cool. Well,
love that. Yep.
That's amazing. Well, like I said, I'm a big fan of your work, and I think you're doing, some just, helping change our dementia care culture on so many levels. And so I just want to, again, thank you so much for all you do. Really is amazing.
Yeah. I really appreciate that, and I just feel like we are kindred spirits on this journey, and I really appreciate all you're doing too.
Great. Well, you have a wonderful holiday season. And again,
Thank you, Lori.
please reach out to Jade. You won't be disappointed. If you've got a conference coming up or looking at some staff training or just looking for a good book or video, go to our website. You'll find lots of great information there. Thank you so much.
So, yeah, you're welcome. My pleasure, and many blessings to you, Lori, and many blessings to all your listeners, too.
Great. Thank you. For those of you that are new to our show here on Alive and Social, you might want to check out Rachel Perrin. She is the culinary director for Kowalski's Market, along with Adam Lee, who is her producer, and they have a lot of fun, what they call them, foodtastic friends and colleagues, and they chat about seasonal flavors, favorite foods, trending topics on nutrition, and everything that's kind of yummy for the tummy. They have a show that usually lasts, maybe 10 to 20 minutes. It's called What's for Dinner Tonight, and they just are fun to listen to, and you'll get a lot of great ideas. Plus, you can always go to Kowalskis.com. That's KOWALSKIS.com to get seasonal menu suggestions that will be easy for you to prepare in little to no time. What else do I want to tell you? Here on Alzheimer Speaks, all of our shows are in the archive, so you can go back and listen to shows from, 5-6 years ago if you want to. Recently, we have had an author that wrote a book called Brought to Our Senses, which was about a family on a journey with dementia. We also had another author whose book was entitled Clueless, A Journey Through Alzheimer's Caregiving. And then we had recently a couple of programs on music and the power of music. But again, you can scroll through all of those and find out whatever perks your interest there. Listen to them anytime you'd like. You can also go to Dementia Chats. You can find that on AlzheimerSpeaks.com if you go to our initiatives and projects. And there you will find our latest video that we did. Again, these are all done with having experts who actually are diagnosed with dementia. And they talked about caring for pets. Is it a good idea for somebody with dementia, or just even being around pets? What kind of effect that can have? Want to mention a few upcoming previews of His Neighbor Phil here in Minnesota. January 7th, we will be at St. Therese in Woodbury. On January 26th, we will be at Gable Pines in Vadnais Heights. Then we're going to be back in Woodbury March 6th and May 20th at St. Therese. And please check out our blog as well. There's lots of great information there. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye now.
Hi, I'm Lori LeBay, and I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.